Hello, everyone. Thanks for hopping in today. We're really excited to have you here. This is 12 Essentials for Remote Learning Lessons. You can see a link to the slides displayed on the screen right now. And when we look at the next slide, I'm going to just quickly introduce myself as I'm talking. I'm Angela from the Seesaw team. I'm the community lead out of my classroom where I was teaching kindergarten for 15 years. And on the next slide, I just want to remind you, we know that during this time, it's really important for you to really document all the amazing professional learning and growing that you are doing at this time. So here are options for you to get a certificate for viewing this session. Just know if you're watching via the recording or you're a Seesaw pioneer, just listen for a code that we will share orally during this session. So today, again, to remind you of our amazing topic on the next slide, we are so excited to explore 12 essentials for remote learning lessons. And boy, I'm sure you have been feeling much like this picture right now, staring at a computer screen, really trying to replicate all of the amazing work that you typically love to do in your own classroom, but we're all navigating this new world of teaching and learning that we are in. So we are so honored today to introduce to you our amazing host for this session, Matt Miller, taught in public schools for more than 10 years, teaching all levels of high school Spanish. In his career, he planned nearly 12,000 class lessons. He taught more than 500,000 instructional minutes, and he graded work for nearly 2,000 days of class. His blog, Ditch That Textbook, and 4 books have equipped and inspired tens of thousands of educators in more than 100 countries. He lives in West Central Indiana and says that he's living the dream, happily married with 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a mortgage. Please help me welcome Matt Miller to this session. We are so excited to have you with us today, Matt.
I am pumped to be here, and so it's good to see everyone. I'm going to try to quickly turn on my webcam just so I can say hi to everyone. My internet bandwidth isn't fantastic, and so I'm afraid if I leave this on, it's gonna bog things down. So anyway, just wanted to say hello, and so you could see my face real quick. I also wanted to go back to this earlier picture here, and I'm looking at this MacBook Pro on the screen, and I'm going, I wonder where I can get those giraffe stickers. Is anybody else wondering that too? You see the stickers on
Yeah,
the bottom of
right?
the computer?
Exactly. Those are nice.
Right. I'm like, man, I think I need to get some of those. So anyway, it's good to be with everyone today as we're going to be talking about, like it said earlier, 12 essentials for remote learning lessons. And so when it comes to remote learning, I'll bet we've probably heard about a lot of the tools that you can use. And of course, Seesaw is right at the top of that list. I think it's fantastic for remote learning, and I've heard so many teachers agree with that. And so we've heard about some of the tools, we've heard about the video calls and the Zooms and all of that stuff. But I wanted to talk a little bit today, not so much about the tools, but about the lessons. And if we want to plan engaging lessons with our students, if we want to give them something that they want to go log on to Seesaw in the morning or log into their learning management system in the morning, and they're going, I wonder what she's got cooked up for today, then I think these are the kinds of things that are going to help them. And when they do them, whether they're at home or at school, these are the kinds of things that are going to help them not enter into that slide. Where when we're away from school, I know sometimes we think of it as the summer slide, and now it's like the remote learning plus summer slide. So I think these are the kinds of things that are going to help us out. Now, Angela invited me to come do this because she spied this graphic. This graphic is part of a free online course that I have on remote learning. I'm going to give you some information about it on the next slide, but this is the kind of stuff that we're going to dive into in this webinar, creating lessons for remote learning. These are some of the things that we can incorporate in our lessons if you're not already. And you know what? I'll bet you probably are using some of these already, but we're going to kind of march our way through these with a bunch of examples and tips just to give you some things to think about. And as you look at all of these, I hope that you don't see it as oh man, Matt put these 12 things up on the screen and wants me to do all of these with all of my lessons. I've already got too much stuff to do anyway. How in the world am I going to do all of this stuff? And that's totally not what I'm going for here. What I want to do is I want to show you some of these things that are super effective when it comes to designing lessons. And I will encourage you to look at these and see if maybe there is one, or maybe there are two things that you might like to include in your next lesson. Or if you're starting to think about school for next year, maybe you think about one or two of these, and then maybe incorporate those. So don't feel like it's overwhelming and that you have to use every single one. So this graphic is part of just one of the modules in this free online course that I've created. It's called Remote Learning 101. You can find it by going to that link right there, ditch.teachable.com. You can sign up for it. It's got more than 2 hours of video content with me, along with infographics. It's got downloadable PDF planning guides. It's got lots of resources and tutorials and all of that. So if you're interested in diving deeper into this topic and some other ones, this is a good place to go. So without further ado, we're going to dive into this infographic here, and we're going to kind of work step by step through them with some examples. So let's go to the first one. And the first one is to create an engaging hook. And I think this is something that we can certainly do in our remote learning settings as well as in our face-to-face learning settings. And this is the one that really gets students asking, why should I learn this? Why is this important? Or maybe even, why is this interesting? And so giving them a reason to learn it, or sort of piquing their interest at the beginning, can be huge. And it also makes all the following steps much easier if we have that engagement factor. And so I know a lot of times teachers will show a short video clip. They'll play a song or a little bit of music that relates to it. Sometimes you can even put up a provocative image or even a controversial question. I think so many times we look at creating an engaging hook at the beginning and we think, I'm going to show a video. And video clips are great as long as, and this speaks to the tip at the bottom of the screen, as long as it's relevant to the essential question that they're trying to answer. So if we want students to think about a certain thing and sort of wrestle with it and come to a conclusion by the end, that short video clip, if we want to use a video, should have something to do with that. It shouldn't be like, oh, we're talking about this one particular topic. Let me just go find a funny video about it. And I know that you're probably not doing that, but that's something to think about, I think, when it comes to those engaging hooks. And of course, we can certainly do those by sticking an image into our Seesaw class or into our learning management system or into something or a video or whatever. So creating an engaging hook is a good place to start. Now, once you've got them hooked, where can we go next? And thinking about what prior knowledge they have about the topic can be really, really helpful. So for instance, just asking what they already know through a variety of different avenues can help us to make sure that we're not covering stuff that they already understand. So encouraging students to do a brain dump. A brain dump is where they think through all of the things that they know about a topic. So instead of answering closed-ended questions, we just ask them, what do you know about X? And then just have them tell us everything that they know. And there's actually research that talks about how important brain dumps are for long-term memory. And it's this thing called retrieval practice that talks about how your studying and learning time are more effective if you recall information out of your brain instead of cramming information into your brain to study. Because so often, what do? We ask students to reread a chapter, reread their notes, information flowing into the brain. The brain dump takes information out of the brain. And if we use that as a study technique, that can help lock it into long-term learning. But it's also a really good practice for figuring out what they already know, engaging in that prior knowledge. Just doing a simple think, pair, share, which can be done digitally, through Seesaw or your learning management system, or even on a video call. And then, of course, recording on the Seesaw Creative Canvas. That's one of my favorite features of Seesaw in and of itself. And I think that can be a really good one. And then the little tip at the bottom says, focus on showing them how much they do know. And see, I think doing something like a brain dump really empowers them with that, because they're able to tell you, here's what I do know, instead of not being able to answer multiple choice questions. So prior knowledge at the beginning can be really good. The next one is to explore the topic. Let students explore the topic. Now, I also want to mention that with all of these tips, not every single one of them fits for every kind of lesson. So depending on what your students are doing, exploring the topic may or may not fit. But if they're given the opportunity to do a little bit of exploring of it on their own, then all of a sudden the things that they learn are things that they have found themselves instead of something being forced on them by their teacher. And that one little shift can make all the difference in motivation sometimes. So giving them some links to some suggested articles to read. Google Earth is a really cool way to explore geography. So if you use something like Google Earth and you have students zoom in on a city or zoom in on a certain part of the world, or even drop themselves down on the street and use the street view so they can walk around on the street, then they get to explore that place. I think Wonderopolis is a great place to be able to take some of those curiosity questions and learn more about them. And then also just a simple search the web. If your students are at a point where if they're able to do some Googling on their own and go search on their own, then that might be a great way. And of course, when it comes to this, make sure that they think about their sources and how they know that they're reliable. It's that whole digital literacy component, making sure that they're using good sources. I wanted to stop real quick, and if any one of these things that I'm talking about, if I throw an idea up there on the screen and there's something that you do, I would love for you to add that to the chat. And so if you'll throw those into the chat, what's great about that is this becomes a great big idea jam where all of us are sharing out ideas. And when we bring hundreds of people together and we start throwing those ideas in, then you don't just get ideas from me, you get ideas from everyone. So if you have an idea related to exploring a topic or engaging prior knowledge or even creating an engaging hook, please do go ahead and throw those into the chat. And I'm going to keep moving. And so if there are other ones that you have ideas for, again, please, 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 please throw them into the chat so that we can all learn together. Here's number 4, explain, fill in gaps in their understanding. So if you've given them the opportunity to do some exploring, chances are they haven't filled in all of those understanding gaps. And so there will be places where they need a little direct instruction from you or a little bit of extra information. And so just a simple, post to the Seesaw class, recording a video within Seesaw or even within Flipgrid, having a video call with your class to fill in some of those gaps. There's another tool that I really like called IORAD that fits for some students. And it's basically a tutorial app that lets you give them a web-based tutorial where they click through all of the steps, and it's not a video. And so that's a neat one to potentially dig into also. And then the tip with this one is to identify what their gaps are first, so you're only providing what they're missing. And so that's better than saying, okay, go explore, and they find a whole bunch of stuff, and then you try to do some direct instruction that's all the same stuff that they just learned. That kind of renders all of their hard work null and void. It's like, well, if they wanted me to explore on my own, then what good is it if they were just going to turn around and teach me what I needed to learn? So it's that ownership piece that's big, I think. Let's go to number 5. Practice new skills with repetitions. And there's lots of research that backs up the power of repetition to be able to gather those facts and to be able to improve skills. Those things that if you practice them over and over again, you get better at them. I'm from Indiana, and basketball is king in Indiana. And so, of course, that makes me think about shooting free throws. The more that you shoot free throws, the more that you practice shooting and dribbling, the better you get at it. And with certain skills in the classroom, remote learning classroom or face-to-face classroom, this fits. And so, of course, you've got things like Quizlet flashcards that have been around forever, but they still do get you those repetitions. Kahoot games, quizzes games, Gimkit games. And by the way, did you know with all of those are kind of like your game show style review activities where you put a question up and everybody tries to answer. Did you know that you can run those on a video call? So if you're doing a Zoom call or a Google Meet or a Microsoft Teams meeting, you start it up and you share your screen with the join screen. And then the students are able to watch your video call on their device. And they can either open up a separate window to be able to ring in their answers, or if they have a cell phone or a second device, they can ring in their answers on that. And so that could be a really fun way to do it. And then there's also practicing on shared Google Slides. This is one of my favorite activities, where you take a Google Slides presentation, you share it out with your students with a link for everyone to edit, and then everyone gets a slide inside of it. And so you just give them a prompt or some questions to answer, and they put it on their slide, and then everybody can see. I know that was a lot of there's a lot of suggestions on that one. And I think the key here is engaging meaningful repetitions. Can we make them engaging and fun? Can we make them meaningful in some way instead of just drill and kill? And I know that's tough, but I think if we keep that in mind while we think about repetitions, I think that can be really good. Let's keep moving. Number 6, discuss to open up important insights. And so if there are certain topics where a discussion or some conversation can help students see things from a different view, maybe everybody has sort of a different perspective or opinion about it, then having a discussion can give you a whole different dynamic, like a whole different way of looking at that topic other than just gathering facts about it. So having, of course, entire class video calls can work. Here's a twist. If you've been doing whole class video calls during remote instruction, what if you took your class and you broke them into small groups, and you had maybe a quarter or 20% of your class in one video call, and you did a short video call with a small group, and then you did another one with another small group and another one with another small group. Of course, that means that you have to do 3 or 4 or 5 video calls instead of one, but you get that small group dynamic. And so that might be something that you want to consider when doing discussions. Opening up a Flipgrid topic to do video responses, discussion in a Seesaw post. If students post something to your Seesaw class, then they're able to comment on each other's stuff. There's even a tool called Synth that lets you do recorded audio, and then students are able to respond to each other's posts, each other's audio with their own audio response. So it almost feels like a voice conversation. And the tip with this one is to consider different modalities. So if you are used to doing discussions by video call, maybe you mix it up with some text the next time, or maybe you try an audio conversation with Synth or something like that. But if you're able to mix up those modalities every once in a while, it kind of keeps things fresh. 7 is to let them create to show what they know. This is one of my absolute favorites of this entire list, because I think sometimes whenever we want to assess and see what students know, their demonstration of learning sometimes becomes answer these questions or write this essay. I think there is a world of opportunity in letting them create something else. So I just put a couple of my favorite examples on the screen here. Adobe Spark videos, where they're able to pull in little video clips, text, images, and make it into a video that demonstrates what they know. Google Drawings infographics. In fact, the infographic that you saw at the beginning of this presentation, which I think is right here, that one was made on Google Drawings. I just did text and icons from a website called the Noun Project, which I really love. And then all of these little dots are just shapes with text numbers in the middle of them. And so just little bits of text and images, text and images can be really good. Even I was thinking a thought bubbles picture in Seesaw. If you have students snap a picture of themselves and then use the canvas to draw in little thought bubbles where they can write in what they're thinking, post that to the class, that can be another way to show what they know. And then a tip for this is, instead of listing everything, instead of like throwing all of the facts in, encourage students to prioritize and use brevity. So like on the infographic, we've got 12 things. I could easily list lots and dozens of things to think about when we're designing lessons, but I kept it to 12. And so that brevity can make it easier for you to grade and more interesting for students to be able to pick up on. We're getting close here. I want to remind you, I'm going to stop for just a second and remind you that, remember, we don't have to do all of these things. I'm throwing out 12 different things in this webinar in hopes that you're able to pick maybe a couple of them that are helpful. So this next one has to do with transfer, connecting to other concepts. When they learn something in our class, of course, it isn't isolated to just that class and just that lesson. So we can ask, how does this apply to other things? How does this apply to other classes or other subjects? How does this apply to other places in your life? And of course, there are lots of places that we can demonstrate this. The recording on the Seesaw Creative Canvas, I think, is a great way to explain. Again, getting on a class video call. You could even have students sketch note it. And of course, drawing within Seesaw could work, but they could even just draw on paper and adding those little images and text together to make it a visual note taking. And I'd say encourage even small transfers. If they can see a little small way that it connects, when we encourage them and we build their confidence by validating those small ways of saying, yeah, it sort of fits in this video game that I play. The answer to that isn't, oh, video games don't count, that's not school. That's transfer. And when we get them thinking about transfer, that's big. 9 is to reflect. What do they think after learning? After they've learned, give them time to think about some of these questions. What have you learned and what do you think about it? Does it make sense? Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it connect to other things? Then another part of reflection too is, how do you learn? What have you learned about how you learn? What did you think was easy or difficult about this, and why? And whenever we give students time to think about all of this, it really helps them sort of operationalize it for the future, like put it into their bigger realm of understanding of the world. And of course, when they do that, that fits very nicely with the transfer that we saw on number 8. And the tip with this is to stick with it even if it's not easy at first. Students probably aren't used to doing it. I found, with a lot of teachers that I work with, it's easy to forget this reflection piece or not even think about it. So a lot of times they're not doing it. So if it takes, if we try it at the beginning, it might take a little bit of time to get used to. Here's number 10, share work with a bigger audience. When students know that they're creating for more than just their teacher. Their teacher is an audience of one. And whenever you do your best work and it only gets seen by one person, there's kind of a lack of motivation sometimes. So what can we do to share their work with a bigger audience? One of the things I love to remind students and teachers about what they're learning is that learning is a gift. The content and the skills and the information, those are a gift, and likely there are people out in the world that wish they had what you're learning. And so being able to share that gift with a bigger audience can be huge, whether that's another class, whether it's parents, the community, or even bigger. And so taking some of the things that they share on Seesaw and downloading them, and then maybe sharing them on a video, on an image, creating a website. I'd say even putting it out on like the school's social media. One of the Seesaw's tools that I really love is the QR code. And so if you're able to gather QR codes to students' work and hang them up in the class, and I know we're talking about remote learning here, but when you get back, or even if you want to just create QR codes that students can scan on the screen, it makes kind of like a gallery walk where they're able to scan and look at each other's work on their mobile device. And so I think those are really good. And when we're talking about bigger audience, I think with the tip at the bottom, if we can encourage students to think about who the audience is that they're creating for, and then how they can serve that audience, that can be really big. One more. I know we've got 12, but this is really the last one. The 12th one is kind of an encouragement. And that's to extend learning if they want to go deeper. And so I think especially during remote learning, this is huge because we've got a lot of kids and I know this isn't the case for everyone. Everyone's got a different situation, but I know with a lot of kids, they've got a lot of time on their hands. And if something that they learned in class kind of sparks their interest, if we give them opportunities to extend what they're learning to go deeper, they might take it. And they might even take it in a place where they wouldn't take it in a regular face-to-face classroom. So if you can find a fun educational game that's related to what you're learning, maybe give them a link to that and they might just go do it on their own. give them some additional activities, some fun projects. If you just encourage them and give them suggestions of things that they can go do if this is interesting to them, so what if 75% of your class doesn't take you up on it? If 25% of them do, that is additional learning that's going on for those. And the tip at the bottom, just because it isn't graded doesn't mean kids won't do it, especially when they're at home. Last one. You're the chef. Design the dish that you envision. I really like to think of lesson design as if you were a chef. And you think about a chef doesn't use every ingredient in the kitchen. The chef picks out the specific ingredients that are perfect for the dish, and then she creates the dish that she envisions. And so when we're designing lessons here, on this webinar, you had a whole bunch of things that you could use. You can think of other tools and other strategies. You don't have to use all of them. And again, remember, you don't have to do all of these 12 things. If you find one or two that can help, maybe start there. So maybe there was something in this webinar that you hadn't thought about for a while, and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally use that. That's a win right there. It's not about checking off all 12 boxes. It's about finding something that maybe could be useful to you and your students in the future. And so that really covers all 12 of them right there. That's everything in the infographic, kind of in a nutshell. And if you want to find this infographic, like if you'd like to download it or look at it some more or even learn more about it, of course, here's the free online course that this comes from, which again is at ditch.teachable.com. You can grab that link and go sign up for the online course if you want. It's free. It's not going anywhere. It has 14 modules, and then notice this at the bottom. It goes down through all 14 modules, and then at the bottom we have certificate of completion. You can get a PDF certificate of completion for 3 hours of professional development credit if you complete the course. Did I mention it's free? Because it's free. Remote Learning 101, a free online course.
We love
Free,
that,
free,
Matt. And
free.
When I hopped into it myself and came upon this graphic quickly at the beginning, I thought more people need to know about this, because I think that when people are designing lessons, they obviously have amazing pedagogy they already know about and great ways to teach, and they're just trying to think through all of those in this time. And I think it's kind of difficult to be able to focus a little bit. So I love having this infographic of all 12 that you can just really maybe just start with one and focus there. So our questions have been blowing up, of course. So before we get to questions, I want to give the code for this session. If you're watching the recording or are a Seesaw pioneer, the code you will need is 109287. One more time, 109287. And Matt, I think so much conversation and idea sharing is happening actually right now in the question component of this live session. And I think that people are so eager to share all the amazing things that they're doing. And I think a great place to continue that conversation is, of course, on Twitter. We have Facebook groups that will continue the conversation in as well, including Seesaw Teachers. But I think one of the things, Matt, that maybe if you want to hop back to that infographic for just a moment of all 12, I think when teachers leave a session like this, it's really, really easy for their mind to kind of be spinning and feel like a little bit frozen. So what is your best advice as teachers are getting ready to use all of these amazing reminders and brilliant ideas as they exit today? What's your best advice of how to really pare that down as they exit this session?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. I think it all goes back to that one thing that I tried to kind of remind throughout the entire webinar, and that is pick one or maybe pick two, but maybe just pick one. And I wanted to throw one other thing in when it comes to this too. There's an idea that I share in my new book, Tech Like a Pirate. It talks about overwhelm. Because I know I just talked to you for, what is this, almost a half an hour now, and I've talked about these 12 different things, and it's easy to get overwhelmed and to look at all this and go, oh my goodness, I feel so overwhelmed, I don't even know what to do. I heard someone give a good definition of overwhelm once, and they said, overwhelm is not the problem of having too many ideas. It's not knowing where to start. And
Right.
so if you can just figure out where to start, and that might be looking at this screen and finding the one of these that resonated with you the most and starting there, that can be good. And if you're trying to figure out where to start, let me give you a couple of quick tips. One is start small. Start with something that makes you go, you know what, I can do that. That is doable, I can do it. And then once you complete it, it creates momentum for something else. So start small. There's also start with impact. What if there's one place where students could really benefit from a change, where they could really, maybe some place where they're really struggling. And if there was a place that they could really grow, that would be a good place to start. And then the other one is also start with passion. So if you're looking for a place to start, if there's one thing that you're passionate about, you're excited about, your students are excited about, that might be a good place to start. So when it comes to overwhelm, the big thing is knowing where to start. So maybe just pick one that resonates with you the most and go from there, and just forget about the other 11. That's okay.
Yes, I think that's a great tip. And will you just show the course again, Matt, if they're interested in learning more and really diving deep? That would be a great place to continue all the learning that has happened today. And I realize we're over about by 2 minutes. I think we could just be here for a lot longer, but I also want to
Yeah.
respect everybody's time that they've already spent in this session. And Matt, can you maybe just go to the next slide to show how they can get in contact with you as well, so
Mm-hmm.
that they
Mm-hmm.
can keep this conversation going? And we are so grateful that you have come here today to share these ideas. And I know that we have hundreds and hundreds of teachers that have taken all of this in during this 30 minutes and are now probably going to just tear into their lesson planning for next week, which is really, really exciting. So we thank you for all showing up here today. We are going to end this session, but know that I did mention the Seesaw Pioneer Program. So this is something we've just launched within the last month that is available to any educator who's really eager to connect and collaborate with peers, for those Seesaw teachers out there, just like you experienced today, have lots of ideas to share. This is really a way for you to come into our community and continue to grow and learn. So if you'd like to get started with that, just go to the website and you can hop in. And Matt, I just want to thank you again for being here. I think you've added a little spark and spunk to everyone's day today. So we really appreciate you joining us, and we are all eager to continue our learning as we plan those remote learning lessons. So thanks, Matt, for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.